Welcome to EP Presents The Making of Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. In my opinion, Metal Gear is one of the best series in the video game industry, and it was a real honor to be able to go behind the scenes on MGS4. Kojima Productions is, without a doubt, one of the strongest development studios on the planet, and it was fascinating to get to meet some of the team members and to watch them at work. We felt you would like to see that too, but first, here's a recap on the history of Metal Gear and Kojima Productions. The Metal Gear saga started in Japan in 1987 when a young game developer named Hideo Kojima decided to build the world's first stealth action adventure. The original Metal Gear was a hit and spawned a sequel called Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake that was released in Japan in 1990. The series was dormant until the mid-90s when Kojima and his team began work on a new Metal Gear game for the original Sony PlayStation. Metal Gear Solid was released in 1998, and the game was a smash hit around the world. Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty was planned as a follow-up for the Sony PlayStation 2 and was released in 2001. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, also for the PlayStation 2, was released in 2004. And now, 20 years since he first appeared, Snake is back in a brand new global adventure for Sony's PlayStation 3 called Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. Metal Gear. The name goes hand in hand with a cutting-edge, state-of-the-art gameplay experience. The mention of the very words conjures up thoughts and images of stealth, cunning, rich characters, and tactical espionage action in the minds of any gamer.
One of the things that strikes me is just the fusion of these memorable characters with really deeply compelling gameplay.
それはやっぱり彼の作るそのメタルギアっていうのがさ、その時代時代で常に最先端をこう走っている、そういうゲームだからじゃないかな。
The series is so renowned for pushing the envelope of 3D console-based gaming that it's sometimes easy to forget its humble beginnings as a 2D stealth action game for the MSX2 home computer system.
最初のメタルギアは、かくれんぼのゲームなんですけど、2次元のゲームだったんですよね。
Inspired by his love for Hollywood action movies, Hideo Kojima gave birth to one of the most memorable franchises in video games. Released by Konami in 1987, Metal Gear follows the story of an American Special Forces soldier codenamed Snake as he infiltrates the military stronghold Outer Heaven. Initially armed only with his wits, Snake seeks to find and destroy Metal Gear TX-55, a nuclear-armed walking tank designed to be the link between infantry and heavy artillery. Despite becoming one of the most recognized video game characters ever, players still know little about who Snake is. But then again, that was all part of Kojima's plan.
主人公なんですけども、主人公イコールプレイヤーなんですよね。だからなるべく、この話をするとちょっと驚かれるんですけども、なるべくスネークにはキャラクター性を持たせないように、そのように作ってるんですけど。
Despite the technical limitations of the hardware, Metal Gear features the same outside-the-box innovation, challenging but rewarding gameplay, plot twists, boss battles, and puzzle solving that can be found in the most recent entries in the series. However, perhaps the most memorable aspect of the original game is stealth.
Before Metal Gear came along, I always wanted to run headfirst into combat like Rambo.
例えばそれまではシューティングゲームとか、敵キャラクターを、そのまま攻撃して制圧するようなゲームが多い中、敵キャラを避けなければいけない、見つかったらまずいというそういうゲーム性を、見出してきたことにすごい、ゲームの可能性を広げてきたなっていうふうになんとなく思ったんですね。
At the climax of the original game, Snake destroys Metal Gear only to find that his commanding officer, Big Boss, is himself the secret leader of the sinister Outer Heaven. The now hostile relationship between these two characters will become a staple of the Metal Gear series, as will the subtle social commentary on the role of the military that is left open to interpretation by the player. Metal Gear fared well in Japan, but in North America, the game was a huge success. This drove Konami to produce a sequel for release exclusively in the West, known as Metal Gear 2: Snake's Revenge. However, this game was made without the consent of Hideo Kojima. Initially, Kojima-san did not plan on making a sequel to Metal Gear, but fan support and the creation of Snake's Revenge prompted him to revisit the series. The result was 1990's Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, released exclusively in Japan. This was also the first game of the series to use cinematics to deliver crucial plot points. Despite commercial and critical success in Japan, Metal Gear 2 would never see the light of day in America until the release of Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence 16 years later in 2006. For all intents and purposes, Solid Snake and the Metal Gear series were finished as the 80s came to a close. But that was all about to change. In 1994, Sony released the original PlayStation console, and Hideo Kojima saw the powerful system as the perfect vehicle to reinvigorate his stealth action franchise. The Sony PlayStation was already a hit in Japan, but it became a true global phenomenon when it made its debut at the very first E3 trade show in Los Angeles in 1995. It was clear to Hideo Kojima and his team that the impressive hardware of the new console would be powerful enough to realize Metal Gear in a whole new way. Kojima and his team began researching, scouting locations, and even military training in order to make the game feel as realistic as possible. Motion capture techniques were used, dialogue was recorded, and a musical score was composed. The team spared no expense and endeavored to make the new Metal Gear game the most elaborate video game ever created.
メタルギアソリッドの時に、プレイステーションというすごくメジャーなプラットフォームに、関わることができたので、これはチャンスということで、もうがむしゃらに、今までやってきたことと、今まで開発して研究してきたこととか全てをつぎ込んで作ったのがメタルギアソリッドですね。
This new 3D technology, apart from making the game look more realistic, opened up a whole new world of storytelling for Kojima.
2D はですね、例えばアングルを変えるとかするのに全部書き直しになるんですけど、3D の場合は 3D のモデルを作ってそこに空間を作ってしまえば、カメラはどうとでもなるので非常に作りやすかったです。例えば、狙撃銃を出した時に 50m 離れたところに人を置いてですね、実際に、狙撃銃で覗いたら、そこに物が存在するのでズームすると本当にその、狙撃銃の感じっていうのがすごく簡単に出たので、
その当時っていうのはなかなかその 3D のポリゴンのゲームっていうのがまだ出だしの頃であまりなかったんですが、レースゲームだったり飛行機のシミュレーションのゲームだったらポリゴンっていうのは割とメジャーで使われてて、でアクションゲームって言われるジャンルでポリゴンのキャラクターが動いてっていうのはなかなか。
Keeping with the tradition of terrific boss fights that were introduced in the 8-bit Metal Gear games, Metal Gear Solid delivers vicious combat scenes that pit Solid Snake against unforgettable villains like Vulcan Raven, Sniper Wolf, and Psycho Mantis.
When you actually fight him, it pretends like it's changing the mode on your TV, like he's changing the video 1 to video 2. And it just made you think about yourself playing the game like outside of the game.
Wait a minute, and then I realized that's not the brand of television I have. It's like, what's going on here?
By the time that Liquid Snake had been defeated and the credits rolled on Metal Gear Solid, it was clear that Hideo Kojima and his team had crafted a true masterpiece in just the early days of 3D action gaming. And now the world was hungry for more of Solid Snake's adventures, just as speculation grew on a new PlayStation being created. The gaming world wondered what kinds of surprises Kojima's team had planned. In the late 90s, Metal Gear Solid was an enormous success on the PlayStation. The game had proven that Kojima's team was more than up to the task of moving their tactical espionage action series into three-dimensional gameplay. But by the year 2000, a new PlayStation console was almost upon us. The PlayStation 2 launched in Japan on March 4th, 2000, while the North American launch of the console followed in November of the same year. The console had a monstrously successful launch amid complaints of a dearth of compelling games to play. The cries of not enough good games died a year later, however, as Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty was released in North America and Japan in November of 2001, and in Europe a few months later.
僕が一番好きなのはメタルギアソリッド2、プレイステーション2のゲームですね。なぜかというと、そのタンカーの上で巨大なロボットメタルギアが出てきて、それとスネークが戦うっていうシーンがあるんですけど、あれがワンダと巨像のなんですかインスパイアの元にもなってたりするので、そういう意味では思い入れのあるゲームです。
In a controversial second act twist, the game switched out protagonists and put players in control of newcomer Raiden. The change of heroes was deliberate and focused purely on growing the fan base for the series.
最初はそれで作ったんですけども、メタルギアソリッドでスネークが人気が出てしまって、ある種偶像になってしまったんです。キャラクター性がついてしまったので、そのキャラクターを、いろんな人が操作するのが非常に難しくなったということで、2ではライデンを主人公にしてスネークを客観的に見れるような、キャラクターの関係を作った。
In the latter stages of Metal Gear Solid 2, the story veers in an entirely new and thought-provoking direction, suggesting that Raiden is actually a character in a Metal Gear video game.
There's a point like where the game goes to a game over screen. And so you think like, I messed up, I died, but I didn't die. But the gameplay's still going on in that little window. Kojima signifies that it's still a game, but you nevertheless get completely sucked in because of all these other things he's doing to make it feel immersive and believable.
Raiden must face up to the doubts that he has in the world around him before he can stop Solidus, and with Solid Snake's help, uncover the truth about the Patriots, the shadowy conspiratorial organization that has been the dominant force behind the events in the Metal Gear games. Needless to say, the complex narrative was a little overwhelming for some Metal Gear fans. For Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, the newly formed Kojima Productions decided to take a more down-to-earth approach.
3は、非常に簡潔なストーリーにしました。スネークとザ・ボスの関係に集約するというようになりました。
Taking things in an entirely different direction, the developers chose to set Metal Gear Solid 3 in the past, at the roots of the Metal Gear legacy. The prequel would take into account real-world tensions at the height of the Cold War in the early 1960s. Once again, players would be in control of someone other than Solid Snake and would instead play as Naked Snake, a CIA operative that is sent into the jungles of Russia with his mentor, a female super spy codenamed The Boss. In the prologue mission, the boss defects and teams up with the chief antagonist in the story, Colonel Volgin. After an intense fight, the boss leaves Naked Snake badly wounded as she and Volgin make off with the stolen nuclear super tank and a predecessor to the Metal Gear called the Shagohod. After healing, Naked Snake is sent back into the jungle to defeat Volgin, confront the boss, and destroy the tank. To do this, Snake must face the members of the boss's Cobra unit. Many gamers have called these characters the greatest collection of bosses in the entire franchise. The End is an expert sniper that fights Snake in a long-range, protracted battle that can literally take hours. The Fear is a spider-like adversary with double-jointed limbs and a surgically enhanced tongue. The Fury is a former Russian cosmonaut who battles Snake with a flamethrower. The Pain has the ability to command hornets and uses them to combat Snake. The Sorrow, a spirit medium, is perhaps the most interesting of all the bosses in the game because he employs the power of the dead to fight Snake. From beginning to end, Metal Gear Solid 3 is the near-perfect prequel, setting up the events and characters that would follow it beautifully. Metal Gear Solid 3 also helped to define and cement the status of Kojima Productions as world-class game makers. The team had expertly shown how to get the most out of the PlayStation 2 hardware and had the sales and the critical praise to prove it.
I'd never played through all of the Metal Gear games. So I had what I called the Metal Gear Summer, and I played through 1, 2, and 3 back to back. I didn't play anything else. and it was the best summer I had ever had.
But would the team be able to contend with another PlayStation console transition? Kojima Productions' toughest challenges lay ahead as the team faced the limitless potential and the baffling technological puzzles of the brand new PlayStation 3.
Yeah, I think the whole Metal Gear series has been a huge part of the PlayStation success. The Metal Gear games, I mean, from the Psycho Mantis battle to the Jeep chase at the end of Metal Gear 1, to the opening of Metal Gear 2 on the bridge, to, you know, the torture sequences that sort of live in all the games. It really is almost like an action movie art film.
The announcement and development of Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots represented a new era for Kojima Productions, as polished storytellers versed both in cinematic flair and dynamic gameplay. The new platform from Sony offered the experienced game makers the opportunity to dream big.
メタルギアソリッドっていうゲームが一番最初にできた時のからのなんていうか思想みたいなものをずっと受け継がれてきてる。でそれが今もまだちゃんと残ってる。
With each subsequent release of a Metal Gear Solid 4 trailer, the world grew more and more excited by the promising look of the game. Was this the Sony PlayStation 3's most important game on the horizon? To many, it certainly looked that way.
メタルギアソリッドの1の時は、例えるならば草野球、子供たちが野原で集まってやってるような野球に比べて、今のもうメタルギアソリッドは大リーグのベースボールのような大きさになっています。もちろん観客も随分と増えましたので、それなりに責任を感じて、責任を重く肩に背負いながら作っています。
Cutscenes from previous Metal Gear games, as artful as they were, don't hold a candle to the new look and feel of Metal Gear Solid 4, which delivers imagery as close to reality as the team has ever come. Expectations from gamers and from the team itself were very high. The work involved in bringing this game to the PlayStation 3 was immense. The team size at Kojima Productions had swelled considerably, and the pressure was getting to Hideo Kojima.
プレステ3というか、まあ、次世代のマシンなんですけど、非常に作らないといけないものが多すぎてですね、非常に大変です。ハリウッドの映画っぽい作り方に今現状になってます。ライン性というかで、今回はプレイステーション3で、作るものも当然増えたんですけど、ボリュームも非常にあって、なおかつ、これが一番大きいんですけど、チーム員が、一番多い時で200人ぐらいいますので、200人対1人ということなので非常に大変です。それが一番辛いですね。
The plan for the game was an epic send-off for Solid Snake and an end to his decades-long saga. Metal Gear Solid 4 brings back familiar faces that have come and gone over the franchise's long lifetime, and the developers worked hard to come to a fitting conclusion for the series.
サーガの、最終作というか完結編なので、今まで出てきたキャラクターをですね、みんな幸せにしたいという思いがありまして、なるべく出しましたね。
In its 20 years, Metal Gear has touched millions of lives. There are fans of this series from all corners of the world. Snake and his co-stars have entered video game and popular culture with tremendous style and will forever be linked to the birth of the stealth action genre.
It was the first.
It's definitely a landmark series in video game history.
ですね、やっぱりステルスアクションに尽きるのかなと。
Will we see more Metal Gear games? Or has this series retired along with Solid Snake? Don't give up looking under suspicious cardboard boxes just yet. When we return, we'll talk to some of the actors involved in the latest Metal Gear Solid adventure and delve into the fascinating work it takes to create the state-of-the-art sound design for the game. When EP presents The Making of Metal Gear Solid 4 continues. Welcome back to EP Presents The Making of Metal Gear Solid 4. Before the break, we took you down the 20-year-long road the series has taken, and now it's time to take a closer look at the latest epic adventure and the work that Kojima Productions put into bringing this game to the PlayStation 3. From the beginning, the Metal Gear games have always delivered state-of-the-art audio as part of the gameplay experience. For the audio team at Kojima Productions, the expectations were set very high for Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. The game was expected to not only match previous efforts, but far exceed them. No one has been putting more pressure on the team than the team itself. There are many different aspects and layers to the audio featured in a video game. It's not just a matter of adding in music, voiceover, and sound effects. Each of these aspects has to be individually created and recorded first, and then seamlessly blended into a surround sound experience that plays out in real time.
It really is a very visceral experience when you have the sound on it. Mr. Kojima worked very closely with Mr. Tojima in a lot of kind of ideas he had for a next generation game. And so you're going to see this with MGS4 that not only is it going to be a 5.1 Dolby surround sound, but that we're doing a lot of different things that people haven't attempted before.
そのプレイステーション3という新しいパワーのあるハード、それに小島プロダクションというのを掛け算すると大変なことになるんですね。でも新しいプラットフォームで最初のゲームなのに、ちょっと自分ではこれ以上のことが考えられないぐらいにですね、すごく複雑な仕様になってます。でブルーレイのストリームというのが走っていて、それからハードディスクの中に何本ものマルチストリームが走っていて、それに加えて、オンメモリのサウンドがなる。でそれらがインタラクティブに、コントロールされていくというのはとても難しくて、でもすごくエキサイティングなサウンドができているんじゃないかなと思います。
Rounding out the soundscape is the musical score, used to create ambience, evoke an emotional response, or resonate a particular moment in the game.
Being a film composer, mostly I'm used to watching the picture and getting my inspiration from there. But without the images at this stage, I had to depend a lot on what Hideo Kojima told me about what he wanted from me. So I think we have a strong theme. He told me that Snake is on his last legs. He's getting a little old now. So I wanted a kind of deliberate, firm theme. Acoustic guitar was his idea.
There's something a little innocent, but also macho.
小島秀夫はその映画の世界にも、それから音響の世界にもすごく関心が高いのでですね、これまでもハリウッドとかいろんな方のお力借りてきたんですけども、その中でもスカイウォーカーランチは小島秀夫にとっても僕にとってもやはり夢の一つという場所であって、それがついに実現したっていう形です。
Performing voiceover for Metal Gear Solid 4 is not merely reciting lines on a page. The stories in the Metal Gear series are deeper and more complicated than many movies or novels. As such, every actor must perform as if their character were a real, nuanced person, in an effort to maintain realism and to ensure an emotional investment from the player.
Use it to shoot the gecko! I try to keep variety in mind. You don't want all your villains sounding the same. So you try to hone out the individual traits that each of these villains would have. You know, Ocelot is so incredibly flamboyant.
悪役をやらせていただくというのは随分儲け物と言いますか贅沢と言いますか、他の人よりずっと楽しいんじゃないかと思いながらやらせていただくんですけれども。
Whereas Vamp is so stealthily villainous. You try to choose the actors, that match the traits of the character and the drawing and the description.
I had to work with Chris and the producers on kind of developing the voice that they were looking for to match this newer, war-torn, post-apocalyptic cyber ninja rider.
Snake, you may be the hunter, but you are also the hunted.
We had a pretty good outline of how we're going to approach it, and we had a substantial size script, but we didn't really think it was going to take more than a few months. And so here I sit now just wrapping up the 9th session after 10 months of working on and off with Chris and the team.
This is Snake. Do you read me?
What happens if it's the first time the player hears it?
This is Snake. Do you read me?
Excellent. Quality of the script and the length of the scripts are starting to feel a lot more like feature films. You know, years ago, doing a video game was just short, choppy lines that involved the gameplay. But once these stories started evolving and these wonderful scripts like Metal Gear, you can really get some nice pieces of acting out of the actors.
Damn it! They got the Mark III! It's all over, Snake!
Good. Not only volume, but you're heartbroken here.
The characters, especially the soldiers, have different emotional states. And so we had to go through this process, Chris and I, of recording hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines of dialogue that will come up depending on the emotional state of the soldier. And we're recording the same lines, but with these different emotional undertones. So that whole process, and it's very complex because obviously we have to work very closely with the programmers to make sure that that comes out at proper states.
Now, I feel very fortunate to be doing Metal Gear Solid 4 because it seems to be a culmination of everything that we've been doing with the previous games.
The strings can give it a tragic kind of nature, but you may not want that so much.
今までだいたい先に音声を取ってから、モーションキャプチャーしたり映像を作っていったんですけども、それだとやっぱ距離感が合わなかったりするんですよね。怒鳴ってほしいのに怒鳴らないとか、すごく近くにいるのに怒鳴ってるとか、そういうのがたくさんあったこともあって、今回は初めてアフレコに挑戦しました。
Doing it to the Japanese motion control actors and was very, very funny, and at the same time so effective for performance because, you know, they do little things with their bodies, and every time he moves or he reaches up for something, I can put that into the voice. It's much better for performance. It's very funny to watch the behind the scenes as it's coming together.
Once the sound effects, the voice acting, and the layers of music are completed and incorporated into the game, they are tuned to perfection so that the overall experience of Metal Gear Solid 4 is amplified and unforgettable. Don't go away. When we come back, we'll have a lot more with the actors and creators behind MGS4. Welcome back. With some of the most elaborate characters ever created for a video game, Metal Gear Solid 4 needed world-class actors to bring them to life. And as you've probably already noticed, Kojima Productions only ever settles for the best. Take a look.
サーガの、最終作というか完結編なので、今まで出てきたキャラクターをですね、みんな幸せにしたいという思いがありまして、なるべく出しましたね。で、彼らがどこに向かっていくのかっていうのも、方をやっていただけると分かると思います。
The process of designing a character begins as a brainstorming session between Kojima and Shinkawa. Sasaki then scrutinizes the drawing and with the modelers fleshes it out further before the team proceeds with motion capture and keyframe animation that will embody all of the character's movements. It's at this point that an actor is brought in to give the character a voice, and once all these elements are assembled together, the team has a living and breathing character for the game.
最初に新川さんのイラストを見た時は誰もが嘘だろうと思ってたんですけども、いざ実際にモデリングしてみて、実際のデモにスネークが出力されてみると逆にそれが当たり前のように見えてきて、
毎回何を考えているのかわからない人で毎回驚かされます。はい、
キャラクターデザイナーの、方と、イメージのすり合わせを、一番最初に行うんですけども、そこから、ポリゴンモデリングに、入っていって、ハイレゾのモデルを、作成していきます。
メタルギアシリーズだけじゃないんですけど、僕が作ってるゲーム全てそうなんですけども、やっぱり、そのゲームをやってもらって、ただ単に面白いとか、時間が 時間潰しができるとかそういうもんじゃなくて、そのゲームをやったことでその人の人生に何かしらの付加価値というかですね、何か持って帰れるようなそういうものにしたいっていうのがあって、メタルギアソリッドでもそういったメタルギアソリッドを遊んだ結果、自分のちょっと人生観が変わったり、ちょっと知識が増えたり。
When it comes to populating the world of Metal Gear Solid 4, Kojima Productions has employed a group of world-class actors that have the depth and range to bring the game's colorful characters to life. Akio Otsuka returns to voice Snake as an aging character, which presented its own set of challenges.
人の気持ちのひだみたいなものとかがすごくこう分かるようになってきてっていうところはやっぱり年を取っていった方が。
Like his Japanese counterpart, actor and screenwriter David Hayter returns to voice Solid Snake.
There's been a lot of stuff in this game that just blew me away story-wise and surprised me.
War has changed. The age of deterrence has become the age of control. All in the name of averting catastrophe from weapons of mass destruction.
With this returning cast of actors, Kojima Productions has ensured the continuity between each of the games in the Metal Gear series. Nanotech scientist Naomi Hunter makes a reappearance, and once again she is played by Jennifer Hale.
To work with people of this caliber, I mean, this company is amazing. Just, they always have their act together. They always have great stories, great scripts, great people. The producer's just spot on. And as an actor, that's a dream. You just show up and do whatever they say.
To help define and shape the beauties in the Beauty and Beast creations, Kojima Productions organized an elaborate photo shoot in Los Angeles, California. Hundreds of photos were taken of each model to help create the digital characters for the game back home in Tokyo.
今回その2段階というか、ビーストからまずビューティーになるっていうそのコンセプトを聞いたときはとにかくそんなゲームがあるんだと。私自身ビーストのままで終わりたくなかったのでビューティーになれて本当に嬉しいんですけど、本当にその発想はびっくりしました。
ビーストはどれも非常にデザイン的に洗練されてるんですけど、ビーストを倒すとビューティーが出てきます。でビューティーはどの人たちも非常に美女でですね、バグチェックの違いがありますね。
With the Beauty and the Beast, we have the beautiful voices of the female characters, and then on top of that, we have the voice of Fred Tatasciore, who's the voice of the Beast, who has this very sinister voice to him, and it's very deep and very chilling.
Come on, Snake! Laugh with me! Laugh! Laugh! Laugh with me, Snake!
The Beast is a demonic entity that is the worst end of 4 victims of war. And the foes that you see in this game are actually victims themselves. And you have one of rage, one of sorrow, one of madness, and one of just absolute psychosis. And I get to play the character, the demon, at their worst right before they're unraveling.
Phil Lamar plays Vamp, the former Dead Cell member with the preternatural-like abilities of a vampire.
The first game, it was rare when a strike actually hurt them. So most of my stuff was very subtle. This time there is actual pain. I mean, there's blows that should kill him, but don't. And that's always fun to play. Be like, I've just been gutted with my own sword, and now I'm grinning and moving down my own sword towards you. And a lot of imagination there, like, okay, where does that hurt? And
Kenyu Horiuchi returns as Raiden.
彼の痛みが自分の痛みであったりするような、そういう切なさを僕感じてしまった、戦いだったような気がとてもするんですよね。
There's an energy that happens between 2 actors when they're working together, and there was a great give and take with Phil and I. And there were times when I was in the moment in my character, and there were other times when I got an opportunity to sit back and watch Phil work. And in doing that, is like playing with a great tennis player. It makes you want to rise, to the occasion. and take the ball and slam it down the throat.
河野ライデンは少したくましくなって切なさもあったり、そういった意味では、不死身でありながらサイボーグ的でありながら、もしかしたらとても、人間的なのかなっていう気もしないではないですね。
A new character to the Metal Gear cast is Drebin, memorably voiced by newcomer to the franchise, Kari Payton.
It's just bigger and better and bolder. They continue just to, turn the crank to ratchet it up.
It's one of the great things I think about this series of games is they treat the aging process very realistically. Otacon, he's definitely gotten older. There's been a lot of tragedy in his life, so that starts to wear on a character after a while.
In the role of Liquid Ocelot is veteran Banjo Ginga, who previously played Liquid Snake and Major Zero in the series.
感情の機敏のレンジっていうのは非常に幅がたくさん取れますので、悪役の方が演じる上では楽しいような気がします。
This man's body has served me well. It enabled me to pass every security barrier between me and GW. After all, the Patriots security system is nothing more than a machine.
Don't go away. When we come back, we'll be taking a look at the unique opening movie sequences in Metal Gear Solid 4. I promise you, you've never seen anything quite like this before. Welcome back to EP Presents The Making of Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. One aspect of this latest game that broke from tradition were the live action and CG movie sequences that load up when the game starts. As keeping with the truly international flavors of MGS4, they were created by renowned CG production house Logan, which is based in Los Angeles.
Roll camera.
More smoke.
Okay, here we go. We're rolling.
Action.
For me, it's been kind of 3 years in the making. First, we talked about doing a logo, and then all of a sudden, we're talking about the opening movie.
The Logan guys, they have the experience, they have that creative eye, and they've made a big name for themselves, making really cutting-edge commercials and visual effects.
I've worked in a lot of places before to realize I wanted to do it a different way. I still believe that you can do large commissions and big projects without turning into a corporate shop. You can stay relaxed about it, and we want people to have a great time being here, working with us, trying to make things great.
What we're doing here is pretty revolutionary, I think, in video games. People just kind of give us this look because nobody's ever attempted this before. It's basically a parody on American television, but with a little bit of a darker edge because it's still set in the Metal Gear Solid 4 world. And this is basically like a cool way of giving the player an idea of what the world of MGS4 is like.
The task was to come up with an interpretation. But so each individual show is meant to be a completely different piece of content that some futuristic, non-existent TV network would create. On top of that, there's 5 different commercials for each PMC. It's just kind of a massive undertaking. You have to pretend to be 20 different people that came up with these ideas. It's kind of like a schizophrenic exercise.
The first one I wrote was the cooking show.
Target. Action. Nicely kneel. Easy on the heart.
We have the chef who's out of the ordinary. He's not a friendly guy from the kitchen, but we have him cooking for the family.
Got there.
We're gonna shoot the whole thing in 6 days, only 6 days. But Team Logan is very, very talented, so we trust them.
We were thinking of shooting on film, and because of a schedule, and we decided to go with HD video. Red seemed the way to go. Now we've got this 4K resolution files. We're bypassing telecine. We're able to control every part of the process. There's a massive amount of cleanup work that needs to happen on green screen footage, even live action footage of a praying mantis plates where we need to track it. We need to computer-generated elements that perfectly match the perspective and the angle and the speed.
The scum who wishes they didn't try. Wakey, wakey, praying mantis.
How's everything coming along?
It's really
beautiful the way that this opening project has come to be. It's been over a decade in the making. It's Ken, our producer, and Alex, the lead over at Logan, being art school friends, always promising each other that they're going to work together at some point in the future. And here we are, many years later, and we need an opening movie for Metal Gear Solid 4, and then we want something cutting edge in pop culture. It's really cool to see. It's kind of nice to see that this friendship has lasted for so long, and they finally accomplished something that they promised such a long time ago.
Don't go away. When we come back, Metal Gear Solid 4 takes us on a trip around the world. Welcome back to EP Presents The Making of MGS4. If you've played the game already, you know how beautiful it is. But how did the team get such an authentic look and feel for the locations in the game? Watch this.
今回は、007のようにですね、全世界を巡るという、まずメタルギアは毎回こうクローズドな閉鎖空間を舞台にするんですけど、今回そうじゃなくて、いろんな世界中を回っていく、そういう規模の話にしました。
To determine locations for the game, it may appear that topography, political climate, and architecture are all part of the criteria, but that's not necessarily the case.
毎回、実は、自分が行きたいところを選んでいるということで、今回、中東はモロッコ取材で、南米はペルーで、東欧は、プラハですね。メタルギアソリッド2でニューヨークだったのもニューヨークをこうぐるっと回れるんで、それでニューヨークにしたんです。
Kojima-san and his team have logged tens of thousands of air miles, all in the name of realism.
MGS のメインのスタッフたちと一緒にその場を共有したっていうことですね。ただ映像を見てそれに音をつけるんではなくて、それは誰もいない戦場っていうことではなくて、
それぞれのエリアでトーンを変えていった方がいいのかなっていうところがあって、例えば中東とかですともう光沢をなくしてすごいマットな世界を再現する。逆に、東欧とかに行くと、あそこは雨に濡れてるようなところなんで、街全体がキラキラと光ってるような、より際立たせたりして、むしろ、各ステージのトーンをばらけさせていったっていうところはありますね。
It's also during these expeditions that the game designers find new inspiration and can even change previously held notions.
そこに唐突にこうインカ文明が栄えたところでしたんで、唐突にこう石畳が現れたりっていう、その大自然と人工物のそのミックスといいますか、それがちゃんと共存してて、ですごい美しい景色を成してて、川が流れて、すごい清らかなすごい自然の空気を感じられるところで、なんか本当は戦闘とかせずにそこにずっとぼーっと座ってたいなっていうような綺麗な森に仕上がっていると思います。
In turn, these realistic graphics help to immerse the gamer into a world they might otherwise never have visited. Thanks for watching EP Presents The Making of Metal Gear Solid 4. This special actually only represents a small part of the documentary that we produced for the limited edition of the game. So if you liked what you saw here, make sure you check out our work on the bonus Blu-ray disc. Do yourself a favor though, finish the game first, and if you haven't played a Metal Gear game in a while, grab them off the shelf and jump back in. You'll see why Hideo Kojima and Metal Gear represent some of the best that this fantastic industry has to offer. We'll see you tomorrow on the Electric Playground.